Well, getting back to that first thing, Delta is out with its first quarter earnings. The company missed on the top and bottom lines as it faced uncertainty and volatility over the past few months. I spoke with Delta CEO Ed Bastian about the quarter. He remains optimistic about future travel demand and economic impacts. Take a listen.
The outlook for summer is strong, particularly international. Our consumers are prioritizing spend on premium experiences, and that's our sweet spot. We deliver some of the best experience in the sky, and consumers are wanting to travel. When we look at the second quarter coming up, we're going to have a good performance. We expect an operating margin of about 15%. We expect to grow our top line mid double digits and generate another net $1 billion of free cash. So I'm encouraged by what I see, and we're not seeing any signs of a slowdown, at least on air travel. Remember, we had our recession. We had the worst recession any industry could ever have over the last few years, where our revenues went to basically zero. So our product is one that people need to be accessing for many, many reasons. It's something that consumers are prioritizing, and even to the extent that consumers are deciding to reduce their spend, it's not coming out of travel, or certainly not coming out of the experience economy. You can go to any restaurant, go to any hotel, get on board any aircraft, and you can see that with your own eyes. What I think you're going to see is that it's going to be a pretty strong, steady pull in the latter part of the year.
And so airlines really kicking off this earnings season. And for any investors wondering why the stock is moving higher in reaction to the miss on the top and bottom line compared to what the consensus estimates were from Wall Street and analysts who cover the stock, it is really about what that forecast looks like for summer travel, some of the trends that are remaining intact. I was running some figures, running some calculations based on TSA traveler throughput numbers, and found that during the first quarter, the entirety of the first quarter, passenger volumes, they averaged above pre-pandemic markers for the first time for the entirety of that quarter. About 2.1 million passengers screened every day during the first 3 months of the year. And so you kind of factor in that broader trend that Delta is really looking into, and what Bastian offered even further during our conversation, saying, I think what you're going to see is a multi-year resurgence in travel. It's going to continue, and not seeing anything in the economic outlook that suggests travel is going to be stalled, and really kind of a nod to where consumer spending has been prioritized now among some of those discretionary dollars into services and into that experience economy.
It doesn't seem like demand is the problem, but it does seem like costs could be an issue. And that's really was flagged by American Airlines yesterday, right? That was the issue for American, and why it's maybe not going to meet its quarter. It looks like the Delta's costs are going okay. Unit costs are going to be up 1 to 3% in the second quarter. Its non-fuel cost to fly each seat a mile were up by 4.7%. So, I think there's going to continue to be some scrutiny there, even as demand does seem to be holding up. Yeah. What is going to happen with costs? We're going to have to continue to watch what happens with pilots and pay. That's going to be a big issue for the airline. So it's not as though it's smooth sailing, so to speak, right? Even if demand is strong. Yeah,
and on the pilot front that you were mentioning, he did give a nod to the last couple of years. They've hired between 3,000 and 4,000 pilots, and really the issue there and just getting them onto flight schedules, it just has been training and having enough of the different seats that they can sit pilots into to make sure that they're getting the necessary amount of training prior to being added to routes and flight schedules. And it's important to remember that this is, as well as many of the other airline operators, they're not at pre-pandemic capacity. Even though you're hearing about them cutting some regional routes here and there, it's really more of the negotiations within certain cities and certain hubs that they can get into and get out of, and then kind of trimming where it seems appropriate. But I think in this near-term period of time, especially as we're thinking about Delta too and some of those costs, sure, on the pilot front, they had to acknowledge that. We spoke about that. But then additionally, how they maintain some of the costs on the oil front as well, or at least on the fuel, I should say, front, is they have their own refinery operations too that help them mitigate some of the exposure that other airlines have as well.
Right, and they do a lot of hedging. Right. Also, all the airlines do for that matter.